Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Berkeley. I'm Reverend Marcus Leifer. I'm so glad to see you this morning. If you're visiting with us for the first time or the first few times, I especially want to offer a welcome. We hope that no matter who you are or how you make your living, how you experience the sacred or whom you love, you will feel welcome here in the fullness of your being. If you have questions about getting to know our community, there's folks in the atrium at the welcome table after the service who'd be glad to talk with you. There's a book at the back of the sanctuary and candles to light. If there's something you would like to share that's on your heart this morning, something heavy or something to celebrate, you may write it in the book and I'll share it during our prayer later in the service. We are beginning in this new month of November a worship series thinking about getting it ripe. We're gonna be done with getting it right and get it ripe instead. What is it that in your life, thinking of those ancestors we called in last week, has come to fruition, is ready to be harvested? Both the beautiful and the painful. We'll be talking about that for the rest of this month. So once more, welcome. Let's rise in body or in spirit and sing our first hymn. It's 103 in that great hymnal, For All the Saints.
Everyone, and welcome. My name is Sandy, and I will be your worship associate today. Welcome to the Universalist Church of Berkeley. As we light our chalice to begin our service, we remind ourselves that our church occupies land in Huchiyun, the unceded territory of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people. May we have the humility and courage to do our part to restore what has been broken, and the wisdom to live into a new solidarity with Indigenous communities and the earth. This morning, we invite Anne Greenwood to light our chalice as she celebrates her 80th birthday tomorrow. Let us kindle our chalice flame with these words by Pat Uribe Lichty. Our chalice is a reminder that in hard times, our ancestors in faith acted with courage to bring hope and safety, to bring life itself to threaten people. We light it today as a reminder of who we are called to be in a world still dangerous and despairing. With courage and faith, we bring ourselves to the work before us. Would you join me in saying our covenant? Love guides this church. The quest for truth and justice is its common purpose. To give thanks, listen deeply, speak with care, honor our differences, and seek and grant forgiveness. These things we covenant with one another.
Long ago, when the world was so brand new that there was still a bit of sheen on it, the gods looked at the earth, and suddenly they realized that they had made a terrible mistake. The gods themselves were a widely diverse group. Some were tall and thin, others were short and wide, some had hair that was blonde and curly, or dark and curly, others had hair that was straight. More dramatically, some were male, others were female, and a few were a bit of both. Yet when the gods had fashioned humans, they'd made only a single gender, only man. How boring was that? What about their sister Aphrodite? They had forgotten to make a single human modeled on her feminine qualities. How could they have made a mistake like that? So the gods got to work, carefully modeling and shaping clay to look just like Aphrodite. They fussed, they worried, They wondered what their new creation would be like. They hoped that she would be beautiful and good. They wanted her to be lovely and kind. When they were finally finished making the first woman, she was gorgeous. When they breathed life into her, she was filled with goodness and passion. They called her Pandora and gave her a special, challenging job. The gods wanted Pandora to keep guard over everything that was her opposite. They wanted her to keep all that was not beautiful and good, lovely and kind, from tainting the world. They took hatred, anger, greed, jealousy, despair, sorrow, suffering, and they corked it in to a bottle. Then they decided that a bottle was a little bit too unreliable, so they decided to put it in a box instead. They gave the box to Pandora and commented that this was now her charge. They commanded her not to open it. They sent her off to live in the lower realms where humans dwell and rub their hands together in satisfaction. All would be well. All was as well as it should be. Pandora would keep the lid to all the evils of the world, and the gods could relax. Pandora placed the lovely box into a corner of her room. For a while, she was so busy getting used to being alive that she forgot all about it. But now and then, when her eyes happened to drift to that corner of her room, she would wonder what was inside that box and what would happen if she opened it. If you'd been given a gift and told not to open it, wouldn't you be just a little bit curious? Maybe. She thought, well, if she just opened it just a crack, surely that wouldn't hurt. Should she do it? What do you think, yes or no? Yes, if she should do it. Should she do it? She should not do it? Halfway? One day she thought, why not? And she just opened it. Immediately, it was too late. The deed was done. Out flew darkness and fear and jealousy and anger, greed and hatred. All the evils flew out into the world. She tried to catch them and put them back into the box, but they moved with such force that Pandora could barely press the lid back on. It was impossible. It was hopeless. Or so it seemed at first. But as she sat there wondering what to do, she heard something tinkling inside the box, something that had not escaped. The sound was gentle. What do you think it was? What could be that gentle thing still in the box? Anybody know? Well, Pandora opened the box just a crack more, and what she saw put a smile on her face. What she saw was a glimmer of hope. She opened the lid a little wider. Hope flew up and out into the world and spread its bright light everywhere. Surely, if hope can survive in a box filled with all the evils in the world, then there is a reason for us all to be hopeful. Blessed be. So, I would love for all of the children who would like to be involved with Ari to meet me in the back so we can go to our separate rooms together. And just a reminder that if you have signed up for the first aid CPR defibrillator training that will happen after at 12:30 today, then we will be holding that in the Sophia room, and I look forward to greeting you at 12:30.
Today we have the honor and privilege of welcoming new members among us. So would the membership committee chairs, Victoria and Lonnie, would you please come forward? And our new members as well. If you are someone who has recently, or in one case not so recently, joined the congregation, would you come on up to the chancel? I want to welcome so many who are here to celebrate that you have overcome not the complicated logistics of signing a book, but the more challenging spiritual hurdle of deciding this could be your spiritual home. We hope that membership will offer you something unique, an opportunity to share your ideas and ideals with us as you join your life's journey to the journey of this congregation. Just as we hope that your lives are enriched and maybe even changed by your relationship here, we hope that you being here will enrich and change the life of our community. May you challenge us with your honest questions, prick and prod our conscience, and stir our hopes with your dreams. So today we have joining Angela Craven, and who I understand we've been trying to welcome for a while. This is what Lonnie tells me. Paula DeFelice, who joined during COVID a couple of years ago, but this is the first opportunity to come and be welcomed, celebrated in a service. Ryan Devine, who went to third grade with me at Oxford Elementary School. Jennifer McDougall, who is a Maybach mom of the high school that I went to. There's fun connections. Hillary Gilliam Shatterly and Christopher Shatterly, who are newlyweds, I understand. Welcome, congratulations. And Kathleen Slobin, who joins us as she pursues studies at Starr King School for the Ministry. Welcome, welcome, one and all. Thank you, Stella, for offering flowers to all of our new members. Great job. You can go.
At this time, we'll invite the congregation, to warmly welcome our new members into membership. And then the new members will have some words, and then we'll all respond together. The congregation, we warmly welcome you into membership. We are glad you have joined us. We know you with your ideas, energies, resources, and commitment will keep this church a vital, growing community. May we renew today our covenant to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another. Welcome.
We enter into membership of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Berkeley. We bring to the community our strengths, our limits, our desires. We ask for your love and encouragement as we make our places among you. We are glad to be here.
All together, we commit ourselves
to honesty in our speaking, care in our living, peace in our meeting, courtesy in our conflict, courage in our speech, integrity in our action. May we be true to ourselves, true to each other, and true to our vision of what together we are becoming. So be it.
After the service, please greet each of the rows holding people. We'll welcome them into membership afterwards as well, and forevermore, perhaps. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joining the Unitarian Universalist Church was a big change for me. Being raised Catholic and attending Catholic school all my life. But as I thought about this, I realized it really is my ancestors who brought me here. One of them being my paternal grandfather, Felix Portillo. Although I did meet him in El Salvador, I was only 6 when he passed away, so most of my memories of him are from stories my dad told me. I also have this picture, which he dedicated to me as an imperecedero recuerdo, an everlasting memory. I could tell from the dedication that he was an eloquent speaker. He was also a shoemaker and a community activist in Guatemala. And when my father was born in 1932, there was a rather repressive regime in power. My grandfather spoke up and organized against it, and at one point was arrested. He was released, but he was told that if he didn't leave the country, and if he got arrested again, he probably would not leave the prison alive. He moved his young family to El Salvador via Honduras, and there he stayed for the rest of his life. So my father grew up mostly in El Salvador, but he admired his father greatly and wanted to follow in his footsteps. In 1950, when my dad was 18, he moved back to Guatemala and opened a shoe shop. He had a successful shop, and there was a democratically elected president in place, President Arbenz. Things were good in the country, but when the president was assassinated in a CIA-backed coup, things took a turn back to the repressive in Guatemala. My father, seeing people appear dead on the streets and having a big mouth, as he put it, was afraid for his life. So he closed his successful shop and came to the U.S. He met my mom here in the San Francisco Mission, and here I am. Even though I have only been to Guatemala once when I was 10 years old, I feel like it is a part of me, as my father always spoke of it so lovingly. My father instilled in me a sense of social justice and always made me question the given narrative of a situation. I believe this questioning is what brought me here to Unitarian Universalism and to UUCB, and I am forever grateful.
I invite you to take a moment to rest more deeply into your seat, to feel your connection down to this sacred earth, your breath moving in and out, connecting you with all that is, all that has been, all that will be. A few words of May Sarton's. Help us to be the always hopeful gardeners of the Spirit, who know that without darkness nothing comes to birth, as without light nothing flowers. The honeysuckle has grown past the edge of its lattice and is shading itself out, browning with the dead undergrowth. The marjoram and thyme are too hot and dry, and we cannot keep up quenching their thirst in that box that seemed so perfect for herbs by the back door. And the rocky bed where the wedding bulbs, daffodils and tulips and ranunculus corms lay waiting, we tore up since the old apple tree died, and now they need new soil. God of sun and soil, help us to be hopeful gardeners of the Spirit. Move in our hands as we prune away that which has overgrown. Help us to bring deep water to the roots of our beings. Watch tenderly as we rip the dead and dying away. Savor the harvest with us, even as we fill the compost with the remains. Gift us strength to turn it all over, to bring that which is exposed into the healing dark, to make visible the life decomposing below. And remind us to rest, longer and more often than we might ever have thought permissible, to rest, knowing that we are only stewards of this living for a time. Rest, knowing we harvest from seeds we did not sow, and others will come to tend that which we scatter today. May we rest here and now, in stillness, in quiet, together. Each week, in this community of care and witness, we hold one another through the seasons of our lives and share those joys and sorrows among us. This week we celebrate with Anne Greenwood who says she's thankful for Zoom to celebrate her birthday with all her cousins and family across the country. And with Richard Angeli, gratitude for the UUCB community, especially the Chalice Circles, which with much appreciation for the poetic legacy of the recently passed Richard Angeli. With Wynne, grateful I am healthy, grateful for the opportunity to love and be loved, grateful for meaningful work and guidance with this work. With Anne Wardell and David Lingenfelter, they ask for healing thoughts and meditations as their daughter starts the process of stem cell transplant therapy on Tuesday. And we're with Carrie, holding my dear beloved friend Chris in my heart as she comes toward the end of her battle with cancer. And with a couple of anonymous writers, we offer prayers, requesting prayers for a very specific issue in my life. May there be peace in my home, inside me, and all my relations, especially one. And that so many of us feel holding deep compassion for all the beings feeling the pain and suffering currently in this world. May we all be safe, healthy mentally and physically, happy and free. For all that we have named aloud, and so much more which remains in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts, may each of us know that what we bring here is held in the loving embrace of this community and by a deeper nameless love that cannot and will not let us go. May it be so, and amen. Will you remain seated as we sing together, "We Are Not Our Own"? few words to begin from the poet Seamus Heaney, the Irish poet whose life and career spanned very difficult times in his homeland. Human beings suffer. They torture one another. They get hurt and get hard. No poem or play or song can fully right a wrong inflicted and endured. History says, don't hope on this side of the grave. There are a few more lines, but I'll ask you to wait for them. Joseph, he's the 12th son of Jacob in that old story, and he's the one who gets the beautiful dream cloak. I've been reading a Rabbi Erwin Keller, I think, who talks about Joseph as this non-binary, kind of gender non-conforming figure in this cloak of many colors, this favorite child of Jacob's. And yet he's despised by his siblings for it, right? He's not well loved, and they plot, of course, out of their jealousy to trap him, to kill him, and then eventually ended up instead selling him into slavery. So whatever your family drama is, I grew up visiting my grandma Betty at Piedmont Gardens, a retirement community in Oakland. Grandma Betty was an artist and a teacher of religious education, a devoted minister's wife. I ended up being invited to come and preach there at Piedmont Gardens a couple years ago to the small community that gathers there one evening a week. And I told a little of her story and of her husband, my grandfather Henry's. Because while I knew Betty, I never knew Henry. And while I knew Betty, I don't know that I ever really knew her all that well. She was holding through her life a dark and what for her was shameful family secret. She couldn't speak through her living days about the honest life of her husband, who was gay, or bisexual. He was closeted, as well as being a Presbyterian minister. I had heard stories of his life, though I never met him. He was a tremendous preacher, I understand. One of the people who came to that gathering in Piedmont Gardens said, you've closed this story for me because I knew your grandfather when he was here in San Anselmo. He was the minister of the church, the Presbyterian church there, while he taught at the seminary, at the San Francisco Theological Seminary. And he told me a story that I hadn't heard before, that there was one time when Henry was getting really worked up about something. He was one of those preachers who would really, go at it. And he was getting worked up, and he thumped his hand down on the pulpit, and right at that moment there was an earthquake. And the whole building shook. And I think he said, I'll never do that again. So I've heard stories of this man. I got to hear stories of him from my teacher in seminary, the president of the seminary at the time, Rebecca Parker, who was a student of his down at Claremont Seminary. She talked about him towering in the pulpit, this storyteller and charismatic figure. She tells also a story of her own life, coming to terms with the way in which she did not shape it in quite the way she had imagined. She's coming to a sense of self. She'd just been elected president of Star King School for the Ministry. She says, "Captain of my ship and master of my soul, I had valiantly charted my course to first become a cellist, then a minister, and now an educator." But there in Berkeley, she has the opportunity to visit some of her distant cousins, people who she's never met before. So she's on her way to this family gathering, and she parks her car. And her first impression of this family that she's getting to meet for the first time, it comes from the bumper stickers on the other cars leading up to the house. "If you want peace, work for justice," says one. Then another, "Teachers, do it with class." And another, "Live music is best." And then there was one that said, "If you love Jesus, tithe." When she met these cousins, she found one was a minister of religious education, another a French horn player and high school music teacher, another a seminary dean, another a parish minister. Every single one of these distant cousins was a musician, minister, or teacher. And several were all three. Not only that, all the ministers were liberal social activists with an intellectual bent, and the musicians were all classical. After the shock of discovering that she had maybe not made her own choices in quite the way she had imagined, she concluded like this: "I did not make myself. My life was given to me." And this is how it is. We receive who we are before we choose who we will become. We are born into relationships before we shape them with our conscious intention. Henry was down in Claremont, and apparently my grandfather, he wanted to come back to San Anselmo, but there was a rumor, one of the board members said, "No, isn't he a homosexual?" and didn't invite him back. While he was there, and this month marks the anniversary of this event, he was killed. He was murdered by a man who he met at a gay bar and who had inherited a tragic psychosis and depth of self-hatred that led him to murder my grandfather among other gay men. As you might imagine, the ripples of that moment are still cascading in my generation. The seeds that were planted then still bearing strange fruit. Every one of Henry's grandchildren born after he died has experienced features of psychiatric conditions. We are shaped by forces that happen long before we are born. We've talked in our society about this debate of nature versus nurture, about where we come from, and is it this organic, the DNA have more to do with it, or does the forces that raise us and shape us have more to do with it? And the framing of that debate itself reflected what is an inadequacy in our thinking. It's an inadequacy of thinking about cause and effect as if it were a linear progression. It's very tempting. Most of us do it all the time, right? It's so much easier to think of things in terms of cause and effect than in terms of a systemic way of relating, of pressures and forces that impact one another beyond A and B. We're beginning, I think, to think about these things systemically as a culture. We're developing a language of trauma. Have you noticed this, that trauma is a lot more common in our cultural vocabulary of late? And I worry sometimes that we're making small of it, or making too simple a language. But we are developing vocabularies for talking about different kinds of trauma: acute trauma or shock trauma, developmental trauma or cultural trauma, collective trauma, racialized trauma or gender trauma, sexual trauma and physical trauma and emotional trauma, intergenerational trauma. This thinking about how does trauma work in our own beings and between us, this is a way of thinking that requires us to imagine in terms of systems. And we're going to talk lots more about this next week. But we can understand in one way trauma as a seed that is planted, that matures, sometimes in unexpected ways. When Joseph makes it down to Egypt, he's sold into slavery right now, he's down in Egypt, and his family is gone, is no longer part of his day-to-day world. And outside of the emotional forces of his family life, Joseph goes on a big journey, and many of you probably know it, but the sum is he does pretty well by himself. Through becoming an interpreter of dreams, he becomes the vizier, achieving status and power that his family would never have imagined for him. We're coming to understand, I think, how the nervous system is imprinted by trauma and how it relates then to other bodies in our field. And this is what I want to dwell on for the month: how we physically adapt to the emotional processes in play in the relationships that are most important to us. Not held abstractly in the mind or the psyche, not just in the brain, but in our bodily processes. Just like the sun and soil and air and water, the other plants around, they influence the growth of the seed. The emotional processes of our families and the larger social groups that we develop in, they shape the possibilities that our beings can express. These are the primordial forces of life, these emotional dynamics of the family. When my moms got legally married in 2008, I asked my mom, what would your dad have thought? What would he have thought of how far we have come? And she said, he couldn't have imagined this world we live in today. It's really quite astonishing, right, what has happened in the span of 2 generations. But in some ways, we've also just barely scratched the surface. Masha Gessen is a great thinker about LGBT rights and progress, but she says the framework of rights has maybe gotten it wrong, that what we need to be talking about instead of a framework of rights is a framework of liberation, a framework that sees how the intersection of our identities requires us to imagine an entirely different system of social relationships in order to cultivate the freedom, which is what we are all seeking. In some ways, I think about the speed at which the progress we've made around LGBTQ rights has been on the backs of the lesbian aristocracy, as one of my teachers would have called it. That intersection of whiteness and class with sexual identity. What we'll need moving forward is a liberatory framework, one that questions whether the way that we have been told relationships and families exist is really serving the freedom of all. When Joseph reunites with his family, they're impoverished and hungry. They've been impacted by famine. And they come on their knees to him, and they don't know it's him, but they're begging for help. And I can't imagine that choice, to forgive those who sold you into slavery, to offer succor in their time of need. And what he asks eventually in return is, raise my bones up from this place. Take them with you. Both Muslim and Jewish holy texts refer back to this story of Joseph. And I think about just the way that all of those people in the story, this family, were products of emotional forces beyond their control. There is no one alive today who is responsible for initiating the conflict in Israel and Palestine. Danielle Serret, a philosopher of restorative justice, says no one enters the cycle of violence for the first time by committing it. No one. These are bones that have been inherited and passed down over thousands of years. And when we are caught up in the emotional anxiety of the processes at work, we're unable to do anything but play out the script, like becoming a minister. These systems, they have a tendency to maintain themselves, to maintain a homeostasis. In an emotional system, one of my coaches says, when anxiety is high, disagreement can feel like betrayal. And I think we've seen that in so much of the public conversation these past few weeks. So these systems, they keep us moving in patterns, moving in ways that seem almost impossible to break free of. But then somehow things do change. My grandfather could not have dreamed of me helping start a gay-straight alliance at my middle school. My mom's getting legally married, my child being encouraged to consider what pronouns they would like to choose in kindergarten. They did it, the story goes. They brought Joseph's bones back to Israel. Even as they didn't have time to let bread rise, Moses remembered the promise, and they brought Joseph's bones back with them. They raised him up. Again and again, peacemakers working at opening doorways to a new possibility in Israel and Palestine have brought about moments where peace seemed possible. Seeds of peace that seems impossible today have been planted and harvested and planted again, generation by generation. So, whose bones do you carry? What inheritance has been passed down and come to fruition in your life? What family dream is it time for you to interpret, to enact, to harvest? My grandfather could not have dreamed of the world we live in. What world might my own grandchildren inhabit? How might the seeds we plant from our harvest today grow into a world we cannot even dream of? Human beings suffer. They torture one another. They get hurt and get hard. And no poem or play or song can fully right a wrong inflicted and endured. History says don't hope on this side of the grave, but then, once in a lifetime, the longed-for tidal wave of justice can rise up, and hope and history rhyme. So hope. For a great sea change on the far side of revenge. Believe that farther shore is reachable from here. Believe in miracle and cures and healing wells. Call miracle self-healing, the utter revealing, self-revealing double take of feeling. If there's fire on the mountain or lightning and storm and a God speaks from the sky, that means someone is hearing the outcry and the birth cry of new life at its term. May it be so, and amen.
We invite you now into the spiritual practice of generosity. Instead of passing the plate, you can give electronically by scanning the QR code on the back of your badge, or you can put a cash or check donation into the donation envelope that you'll find in the back of the pew in front of you. Write your name and mark offering plate or pledge, and then put it into the donation box beside the atrium as you leave the service. Each week, half of the offering plate is shared with a nonprofit Good Neighbor organization recommended by our wonderful Social Justice Committee. Thank you so much for practicing generosity with UUCB and with our good neighbors. Offerings of any amount are accepted with gratitude. The Good Neighbor for this month is Nurturing Independence Through Artistic Development, NIAD. We are honored this week to have their development director, Rebecca Teague, to tell us a little more about their organization. Thank you so much.
Let's see if I do this well. Can you all hear me? Thanks for having me. I'm sure some of you have seen the videos. NIAD was created in 1982 by a psychologist and an artist, Elias and Florence Katz. Our program grew out of activism from the 60s and 70s in the disability rights movement. The Katz's vision broke from one of institutionalized care to one where people with disabilities are not only encouraged to create art and express themselves, they're not only trained in art, but supported in their efforts to transform the art world and the disability systems that go alongside them. We retain that impulse towards care and creativity every day, Monday through Friday, on 23rd Street in Richmond, offering space for art and collective action with the East Bay community and beyond. Today, we work with 75 incredible artists in painting, ceramics, fiber arts, music, performance, jewelry, assemblage, and so much more. Our artists participate in 100 or more exhibitions yearly, both in the East Bay and beyond, including Europe. Last fiscal year, our artists made roughly $200,000 in commissions. This is really important for many of our artists. This is their only flexible income that they receive outside of their SSI. So it creates a space where they get to make decisions in their own lives. When you learn about NIAD, when you come to visit us, I'm inviting everyone in this room to come and see me. I'd love to give you a tour. I'd love for you to see our exhibitions. I'd love for you to meet our artists. All of you can amplify the story of disability, amplify the story of disability art that affects all of us, really. You know, you can honor an original voice that's really wanting to express itself. And you all can create another way for disability to show itself in this world. So thanks for having me today. We're totally honored. And you are an incredible speaker, oh my goodness. So thank you all.
Wow. Please join me in dedicating our offering. We dedicate our offering and ourselves to the mission of this congregation, to create loving community, inspire spiritual growth, and encourage lives of integrity, joy, and service.
Good morning. I'm Charis Tomador, your Connections Coordinator. If you're new to our church and you'd like to learn more about how to get connected, I welcome you to find me or any of the greeters at the welcome table in the atrium after the service. To find out what's happening in the life of our community, you can always check the news link on the homepage of our website, where you'll find our weekly email newsletter, The Week Ahead, which includes a list of activities, announcements, and contact information. This week, I want to especially lift up the following. Today at 1 p.m., join us for Love Song Waltzes and Chocolate, a lovely and fun early afternoon program of music and chocolate treats. You can see the signs for it outside. This Friday, November 10th at 7 p.m., the 2023 Lawrence Lecture presents spiritual theologian Matthew Fox. His lecture is titled Towards a New Mythology, New and Ancient Names for God Derived from Mystical Ancestors and Contemporary Science, and fit for some atheists too. It will be followed by a Q&A led by our very own Reverend Marcus and a book signing. Tickets are available on our website and at the door. And I'd like to say, please try your best to join us for that one. It's going to be awesome. And next Sunday, November 12th, we invite you to our personal theology session titled Tripping in Transylvania, Enlarging Our Global Unitarian Universalist Perspective. Anne Greenwood and Jay Atkinson recount their recent visit to historic Unitarian homelands in the Transylvanian region of Romania, and Anne's visit to UUCB's partner church village. I swear I tried to pronounce it before and I couldn't get it right. Do you know? Can you say that? Yes. Thank you. I promise to learn to say it. Now let's rise once more in body and spirit, and join in singing our closing song. It's number 1051 in the Teal Hymnal, and the words will be on the screen.
Will you reach out a hand or join an elbow or a shoulder and let us be connected? Oh, you grandmother's prayers, you grandfather's dreamings, may what has been planted in you come to fruition in a world in need of your harvest. May you touch an aching world with your love today and in all the days to come. May it be so, and amen.